would we consider an Oreo healthier than an egg then? Because
Right?
egg has cholesterol, right?
Welcome to Together Unprocessed, where five friends from across the world share real conversations about food, healing, and life. Let's get started. Welcome, everyone, to our podcast this morning. There is, we are so passionate about what we've learned over the years of our blood work, our lipid panel. And this morning, we're going to dive right into how to read your lipid panel. And this is just going from how we talked about your blood work in our previous podcast. This is episode or part 2 with many more to come. Before we start, who are we? I'm going to start with Hugo. Tell us who you are, Hugo, where you're at and what time or whatever you like.
Okay. I'm Hugo. I'm a software engineer and I'm also interested in science and wellness in general. And I'm in Estonia and it's 2 p.m. and yeah, it's getting warmer now. It's nice.
Nice. Suntan weather, right?
Maybe not yet, but in about a month for sure.
Really? I'm getting a little bit of sun, so suntan weather here. Go ahead, Ash.
I'm Ashley. I am in Tasmania, Australia. It is 20 to 10 in the evening, so I'm the night owl here. And yeah, we're heading into winter, so it's starting to cool down a bit. So some days are warm, some days are cold. We have the fire going now, so.
Do you have snow in the mountains?
We did yesterday.
You did yesterday? Yeah.
I wonder what your cold day is. It's probably like warm to us.
Zero. It was 0. It was 2 this morning. 2 degrees this morning.
Ah, okay. Okay, fine.
So we do get the minuses.
Okay.
But we
That's
don't get the snow like you. We don't get the snow like you guys do on the ground. We've only had that once in all the years I've been living in this house.
Wow.
So it's more like just gets to like 400 meters on the actual mountain. So it is cold coming down, but not like you and Kim where you walk outside and it's snow.
We can drown in snow. Yeah.
We disappear because there's so much snow. Yeah.
In the mountains, yeah, I think that people do, but yeah, where we are, we're at the base.
Well, when we did the introduction of you, Ashley, I was like, I'm amazed how many Australians we actually have as followers. And there's a lot more in Tasmania than I ever thought there would be. And as we're going through the comments, which by the way, we read them all, I was like, wow. I was actually really quite surprised. Yeah.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
And I'm Kim, and I'm from Ontario, Canada. And it's, I don't know, 7:45 here this morning. And we're coming into late spring, early fall, or early summer, and loving it. It's been a long winter. So with that said, let's get into it. We're going to talk to you about reading your lipid panel. What's a lipid panel? It's your blood work. And basically what gets tested when you go to, like your doctor wants to order blood work, then there's very specific things that the doctor asks for. And what the standard panel actually measures and the context that changes how you read it. And that's what we're going to talk to you about today. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start and then I'll turn it over to Hugo. What's on a lipid panel? Let's break that down. So the first thing we're going to talk about is total cholesterol. And it's the sum of cholesterol, or the sum of all cholesterol that carries in your blood. And that's how they test is when they take blood, right? On its own, it tells you very little. What matters is the breakdown, and we're going to talk about the breakdown. So the first thing we're going to talk about is LDL cholesterol. What is it? It's low density lipid proteins, often called the bad cholesterol. We're going to explain that as well. That framing oversimplifies what LDL actually does. And this is why we want to bring this to you, so that we give you more to think about, and you can go down the rabbit hole and start researching some of this as well. The next one is HDL cholesterol, which is high density lipoproteins, often called the good cholesterol. And I can't tell you how many people I talk to, And they don't even say LDL or HDL. All they say is bad cholesterol and good cholesterol. So hopefully we can put that all in perspective for you today as well. HDL is a carrier with a different role, not a moral category. We'll break that down as well. Triglycerides, and personally myself, I just call them tris. I think that's pretty cool. Anyways, triglycerides is the fat circulating in your blood. It's highly responsive to recent meals, alcohol, fasting state, and metabolic health. And people don't realize that. And like if you want, we encourage you to watch the episode before this so that you can follow in sequence what we're talking about, is the triglycerides. And when we go and we get our blood work tested, a lot of the results can be what you ate or what you did the day before or what you did before you went and got the blood work done. Very important to understand. And non-HDL cholesterol is a total cholesterol minus HDL, a summary number some labs report. And this is where we're going to get into the meat of it. And what the heck do those numbers mean and how do you interpret them for each one, the cholesterol, the LDL, HDL? And there's nobody better than to talk about this and explain it than our very own Hugo. So Hugo, I'm going to turn it over to you.
There's actually quite a lot of people that, have talked about this topic, and, they've, their talks are brilliant and their discussions, but it's often the case that they're too technical. It's hard to actually get the big picture without, having like a foot in science or all of that. So, what I'm trying to do, I'm going to try and simplify all of it and make you understand, what is cholesterol, and when your doctor mentions cholesterol, it can be quite different, right? It's not just about the molecule itself. It can be the lipoproteins. Those are the carriers of of the actual cholesterol and the fats in your blood, because as most people know, fats can't dissolve in water, so there needs to be a carrier. That's why you have lipoproteins. It's just a fancy name for like a globulus, or it's just like a membrane that houses all of the fat and cholesterol that needs to be carried. And what a lot of people don't know is that the liver is actually the hub of most lipoproteins, or those carriers. And I think a good analogy to understand how it works is to think of it as like a truck carrying a load. Trucks travel long distances to carry whatever goods they're housing. And in this case, the goods are, the triglycerides, which are the fats, and the cholesterol, which is also necessary for, for your body. It's important for cell structures and all that. So if you don't have enough of it, it can cause issues. And that's why your liver also makes cholesterol, which a lot of people don't know. That even if you reduce the amount of cholesterol you eat, the liver will compensate for that. It will still produce the cholesterol because it's a requirement. Each cell needs cholesterol, and there's no ifs and buts about it. I think it makes up about 35% of the cellular membrane, and each of your cells has a membrane. So you can imagine that's just one aspect of cholesterol. And people talk about mitochondria, the nucleus, the fancy terms. They all have membrane, and that membrane has cholesterol as well. So it's tremendously important. And the membrane is what separates the inside from the outside, and that's where you have the exchange. The membrane is one of the most important parts of our bodies too, because all the traffic goes through the membrane. It has to go through there, like through proteins, through just dissolving through the membrane. There's a bunch of ways, but it's vitally important. And going back to the analogy of the trucks, think of each of your organs as maybe a city. Maybe you need to travel from what's a city like New York to Los Angeles, right? Like a truck needs to go that long distance. That could be your organ, right? Traveling between two organs. Like in this case, it might be your liver, because the liver is producing most of those carriers, most of those trucks, and your blood vessels are basically the network, the highways through which those carriers can go through. And that's how it works. And when we go deeper into the different markers, I can explain more. But basically, LDL, I mean, it has the misnomer of bad cholesterol, and it's because of having that flawed research in its history. And that has been now, with the recent research, debunked. It's not actually, like, the association between high LDL and mortality is very poor. And from the studies done, it's actually that it seems to be the case that higher LDL promotes more lifespan, or that it's more connected to that. And the higher you have those levels, the higher likelihood, at least in those studies, of you being alive. So the mortality issue was more with the lower LDL levels. And I think it was a major study by WHO. Anyway, there's a lot of big studies out there about this, and when you look at those results, it even corroborates the picture that it's not actually the LDL that's the issue. And HDL, it's called good cholesterol, but there's no, honestly, there's no real difference between it's a made up term, good and bad cholesterol. And in this case, LDL isn't bad, HDL is neither good nor bad. It has a specific function. HDL is more for carrying load, cholesterol and fats from the cells into the liver, but LDL is the opposite. LDL is created in the liver so it can carry those nutrients across the cells. So that's why you have LDL in the blood too. It's there for a reason. It's not a mistake or an oversight by nature. It's there for a reason. And and just wanted to point that out. It's not as simple as it seems. You might hear doctors say that LDL is bad and HDL is good, but it's not true actually, exactly, because it is all regulated by the body and it depends on your circumstances, and nobody really knows the right answer. We're just trying to guide you on the right path of what we know. We don't exactly know what levels are optimal either, but from our own experiences we can at least attest to what we've experienced and what works. And so going to the numbers, I'd say, like the total cholesterol, as Kim said, it's measuring the total amount of cholesterol inside the blood. There's no differentiation between if it's LDL, HDL, all of that, so it's not really that useful. And total cholesterol is, it's a marker we don't actually look at that much, because it doesn't say anything. Even when it's, I think if it goes to the extremes, that can be worrisome. If it's extremely low, that can actually mean that there's maybe a metabolic issue, or perhaps it's too high. But what is too high, right? Like, if it is causing issues, symptoms, then it is probably too much. But those cases are extremely rare. It's more that the case that the cholesterol is low rather than being high. And so the reference ranges in done in labs, it's based on a set amount of people, like a few thousand people or 10,000, that first come into the lab, and there's no differentiation between if they're healthy or sick. So when you get labeled as having high cholesterol, it might just be that like you just had a certain amount of population, having, it could be that that population had lower levels of cholesterol than another population, and you could just be flagged as being high for that.
That's a very important point to point out too, is people don't realize, like when they say this is your an average number that we shoot for. Well, where's that come from? And you just told them where that comes from.
Yeah, so it's like the reference ranges are not, it's like an average on a population that's not even controlled. Like, we don't know if they're sick or if they're healthy, and that can, it doesn't affect just the lipid panel, it affects all the blood panels, but in this case we're talking about the lipid panel. So
yeah,
the units are also different, for cholesterol and the lipoproteins, the carriers. In US they use milligrams per deciliter, whereas the world uses millimoles per liter. So we also have a conversion in the companion PDF that you can use if you want to calculate, whether depending on the side of the world you're living in. So you can use that to calculate and convert the units. Like usually like 200 milligrams per deciliter or 5.2 millimoles per liter. If it goes over that, it's commonly flagged high. It's pretty much in that range across most countries in the world, and it's like as I said, not a very useful marker. I think LDL is more valuable, but it's still not useful. I think the most useful markers are the triglycerides and the HDL. And later we're going to talk about the triglyceride to HDL ratio, which is, I think, the most useful marker in the lipid panel you can have. And, it will vary in populations because it's not all the same in standard diet populations. It will be different for a ketogenic one, because the diet is itself different, right? It's not carbohydrate rich, it's low carbohydrate. So the bloods will vary from that. So it's good to take that into account when you're looking at those ranges, because, most people eat carbs, fats, and all of that, like omnivore, an omnivore diet. It's not it's not a low carbohydrate diet, so you need to take that into account. And I'm talking much.
No, it that's true. Like people think that, come on, we have an obesity epidemic on our hands right now. And that's why it's so important that people understand, like, if you can understand your breakdowns of what your blood panel or your lipid panels is, then you can take that back into your own control. Just like Hugo said, well, what's HDL, what's LDL, what's triglycerides and stuff, and he talked about the analogy of the truck and stuff. It's like, people don't even realize that our liver produces cholesterol. They don't have a clue. And when I first learned that, I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Our body needs it, right? So when you're overloading it, then that's when we have a problem, right? And that's what we're talking about. We're just breaking it all down. And like Hugo said too, we have a companion PDF. Like, please go get a copy, because it breaks it down even more. The numbers, how you can actually take the numbers and you can do the math and come up with, oh, okay, I get it. And then you can have a pretty good idea of where you sit. Yeah, Hugo, great information. That's why we turned it over to you, bud. You're the best at doing this. Can we talk a little bit about the non-HDL cholesterol? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Non-HDL, that's mainly, as you explained before, it's like total minus the HDL part. And, it's another marker that they use, but again, I think it's like the total cholesterol. It's not that valuable because it's not really actionable. It doesn't tell you much. I think looking, as I said before, looking at the LDL is probably more interesting. The commonly normal levels are probably not actually optimal, because like if it's below 100 milligrams per deciliter, 2.6 millimoles per liter, that's actually, like, as I mentioned in the studies done, those large-scale studies across millions of people, that's actually found to be more correlated with more mortality and higher, risk of it. So it's worth taking that into account. It's probably, the blood panels you get, the recommendations there and the reference ranges could be far from the truth. And you might be actually too low on the LDL, because there's a reason why your liver makes it, and if it is lower than what it should be, then there's maybe a metabolic issue worth looking at. And I think that's what we kind of discussed in the last episode we did too. Those are the most useful markers you can get, but this is like a second level to it. Like this is a progression. This lipid panel can give you a metabolic overview too. It's not as detailed as the A1C or blood sugar or insulin, but it's still useful. And
Absolutely.
in ketogenic populations, LDL can skyrocket, and probably have heard of this too, like high LDL being bad, but it's not actually, it doesn't seem to be the case, because those people are not developing heart disease or having congestive heart failure or heart attacks.
Diabetes.
So it doesn't seem to be an issue, even though it's high apparently. And the interesting factoid I can give you is when people are having heart attacks, usually, when they test their LDL, it's actually dropped quite substantially, into the range that is considered optimal often. And that seems entirely contrary to to the idea of LDL being bad, because why would it drop that much? It usually happens, I don't know how well it has been studied, but I think it happens before the heart attack and lasts afterwards. So it is quite perplexing to the medical community. But as I told you before, it's LDL is there for a reason. It's not actually malicious, and your body produces it because there's a demand for it. All of your cells need nutrients, and LDL is just a carrier for those nutrients that it needs. Yeah.
And it's interesting you said that, Hugo, because I tell a lot of people as well is, and I've even had this conversation with my cardiologist as well. They wanted to put me on statins, and I said, give me a chance to look at myself, what I'm eating and stuff, which, I'm pretty much carnivore. Anyways, there's an individual out there that we encourage you to look up, and his name is Dr. Nick Norwitz. And what he did is he used himself as a guinea pig, and he ate Oreo cookies for 1 week, and he lowered his LDL to what they consider optimal numbers. Oreo cookies. That's something that people need to think about,
If I remember, he wasn't feeling that well too afterwards.
He was not feeling well at all. However, it was his own, and he's a scientist, by the way. And just look him up, or you can just Google Oreo cookies, and Nick Norwitz will come up. And what is a true reading? What does LDL actually do? And that's what we're trying to bring to you. So
will we consider an Oreo healthier than an egg then? Because egg has cholesterol, right?
Right.
So
and we talk about this all the time. We talk about the food pyramid and stuff. And listen, I don't judge anybody. If you're vegan, you're vegan. That's great. If you're vegetarian, you're vegetarian. That's okay. What your lifestyle is your lifestyle. We're just giving you stuff that maybe to take into consideration. We're carnivore. And, I'm very proud to be carnivore. Am I that every single day and stuff? No. I have my moments. There's moments that I do keto, you know? But the thing is that my blood work reflects that. And I'm happy with my blood work. Whereas when I was eating omnivore and I was eating all that processed food, I wasn't feeling well. I was obese. And my blood work reflected it. It showed me, you're not going in the right direction, Kim. So even
Yeah,
if you come back to a whole food diet and get rid of all that ultra processed stuff, you're going to see your lipid panel change. You're going to see a change.
usually what gets out of control is usually the triglycerides. The triglycerides are, I think, probably the most valuable marker in the lipid panel, because if you have an elevation of triglycerides, that's usually like it signals a metabolic dysfunction in most cases. It's not always the case, but for most people, that's what it means. And, having it above, perhaps like 500 or like 200 milligrams per deciliter, that's going way too high. So it's like, I think it's worth looking at that. And HDL also, is important, like having it above 60 milligrams per deciliter or 1.5 millimoles per liter. That's probably, where you want to be in terms of optimal health.
Yeah.
And, we talked about the triglyceride to HDL ratio. If you want to calculate it, you have to get your triglyceride reading and you have to get the HDL. And they should be in the same units as well. We have like I mentioned, like a conversion formula that you can use. Ideally it should be.
Yeah, right there. Yep.
Ideally, we believe optimal is around 0.5 to 1 for the triglyceride to HDL ratio. And usually when it goes above that, it might be some metabolic issue. It might be stress. It might be sleep. It might be a bunch of other factors that are elevating it. So that's why we have emphasized how important, getting, like prepping for the blood work is, because you need to properly, like control for the variables, because, the doctors do tell you like, yeah, you just need to fast 8 to 12 hours. But to be honest, that's not actually enough. Because there's a bunch more stuff that you have to control for, like maybe it's not worth doing high intensity exercise the day before, or especially during that day, or even being stressed. If you're too stressed, it can show up in the blood work, and
Road rage, getting to your appointment.
Yeah.
exactly right, and it makes it less valuable because you don't have the the actual reference, because when you do your next blood work, you might not be stressed. You might have not done exercise, and it's going to affect your numbers. You won't have that baseline to compare to. So it's really important to be consistent with the blood work. You can do exercise, but you need to make sure that the variables are all the same, really.
Exactly. But you do this blood test, make sure you replicate it your next one, that you don't have deviation from whatever it is. And just hitting on that, Hugo, is exactly, that's what we're going to talk about next, is the context that changes how you read your results. And, there's a few of them that are very important. Hugo just mentioned a few. Ash, go ahead and tell us some of the other ones.
I was going to just say that we're just listening. I get so intrigued when Hugo talks about all this stuff, because it does fascinate me, especially cholesterol, because I'm learning all of that with a few family people, people in the family with cholesterol issues. But I think one of the things that we've been told as well is how bad cholesterol is. And what we forget is it actually is really important. Our body needs cholesterol to run, and if we're not going to have it, our body's still going to produce it. So I think that's something important to remember as well, because it's something that I didn't know, back before we started carnivore, how important cholesterol actually is for our bodies, the correct ones. And as we get older, our bodies does start producing more as well. Hugo might, I don't know if Hugo agrees with that, but that's what I've been told as well. The same number can be, interpreted different ways as well, depending on, as Hugo said, what happens in your life, with the stress, with everything as well. And most of the time is, as Hugo mentioned earlier, is the fasted state. And our triglycerides are particularly sensitive to the recent meals, as Kim mentioned earlier on. And most of those lipids are taken on fasting. So when you then are doing unfasted blood, it's going to then have a different reading as well. Because some of the tests that you do don't need to, be fasted.
Fasted. Yep.
You guys mentioned stress and all of that earlier and what's happening on the way, but there's also things to factor in are recent illnesses. Acute illnesses that can raise triglycerides all over HDL temporarily. And a panel taken sort of 2 or 3 days after you've been sick might be different to when you're healthy. So it's very important, as Kim and Hugo both mentioned, to make sure that you sort of replicate what you did in the previous ones. And another big thing is your medications and supplements. Statins, hormone therapy, blood pressure medications, fish oils, niacin, all those things can shift the numbers, and they're things to take into account that you're taking. So when you are going to then get your results, it's good to then discuss that with your doctor as to what of those, what medications and supplements you're taking, so that the numbers can then be read accordingly to that. Hugo can explain a bit more on that as well once we finish going through mine. Lifestyle stages, pregnancy, menopause, perimenopause, all those are going to change your numbers as well. The life transitions, if there's a problem going on. So, those are things to look at as well. And also, one blood test is not the definitive results of what your body's going through. It's best to do, it's a snapshot of what our body's going through at that specific time. It's best to have 2 or 3 in a 12-month period to then see which way your body is actually tracking, because maybe it was a false positive or something. Maybe it was that you were stressed on that particular blood test that you did. So it is best to then do 2 or 3 so you can then see whether it's one draw trend or just a one draw numbers, or whether it's a trend where your body's going. So with that, I'll probably hand it over to you guys, and you guys can have some input into that as well.
Yeah, one of the things that I really try to hammer home is you can't manage what you don't track. And it's like and I learned a big lesson on this too many times, is that and I know you can all relate to this when you listen to this, when you go to your doctor and your doctor says, what did you eat your last meal? What did you do last week? What did you do, a day ago or whatever? Like, we are all over the place, and that makes a difference as well. Like, when you're doing your blood work, track what you're doing. Like, when you go in and do that blood work, what was your morning like? What did you eat, if you ate anything? What did you eat in the last 24 hours? What is your state of mind? Where are you at in your whatever, even your cycle? There's so many different things that can affect that. And one of the best things anyone can do is keep a medical journal. Mm-hmm. I encourage that, huge. Keep that medical journal. And you'll see, as you come up to your next blood work, you say, okay, well, this is what I did in my last one. Hopefully it wasn't stressful and all that other kind of stuff. But if it was, like, for example, I have a thyroid problem. And if I go in and have my thyroid tested right now, and I'm on my thyroxine, right, and a bunch of other stuff, but my thyroxine, I will not take my thyroxine that morning when I go get my blood test, because it can affect it. Mm-hmm. These things are very important to know.
And with your diary, it's also very important if you're tracking your sugars, because it also then, when you're tracking that, you can then see which of the foods are spiking.
Huge.
Going back to the last week's episode, which are spiking your sugars, which ones aren't having much of an effect. It's very good to sort of track that as well, because then if it is something that you're eating that is raising your sugars and your insulin that high, to avoid that.
Exactly. Like, if you're eating Fruit Loops first thing in the morning, we need to talk about that. Because, like,
Definitely.
when and where did Fruit Loops ever take over from an egg as being healthy? Like when did that change happen? And if you guys want to have a discussion about that, we can. Because all the sugar and crap and the dyes and stuff that are in Fruit Loops, how can that be better than an
There's
egg?
seed oils there too, and
And seed oils, exactly.
it's a big topic we haven't
We will be.
dived deep
We
into.
will be.
Will be.
But they will definitely affect the blood lipids
Huge.
and the numbers
Yeah.
there.
Mm.
And that's why they're promoted too, because they lower LDL commonly, but it's not through like a mechanism you would actually want in your body. So
Exactly.
we can mention or talk about that in a later episode, because it is fascinating, and it's not. You know what is common inside is like the omega-6 to omega-3 imbalance. That's a red herring. It's not the main problem with seed oils. But anyway, it's a big topic on its own, and a lot of the knowledge I've acquired is through Dr. Paul Mason, Dr. Ekberg, Malcolm Kendrick in some ways too. There's a lot of people that have discussed lipids and what they actually mean, and your blood work. So if you want to get more information, those are great resources to use too.
Huge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think Paul
And
Mason
we'll have links in the show notes as well that you can go and check them out for sure.
And Paul Mason is a sports doctor in Australia, so Ash knows quite a bit, I think, about that. So it's I think he's well renowned in the world too.
So is Ekberg. Ekberg is a
Yeah.
sports, yeah. And I love his stuff. I love how he explains it. He breaks it down like I'm a 3-year-old, and it's like, I get it. I absolutely get it. And I love his pictures and everything. Ekberg, oh yeah, huge. Absolutely huge. So we could talk about this for a very long time. First thing what I want to do is open it up to our viewers and stuff. If there's anything you would like us to discuss, put it in the comments. We read them all, and we can definitely look into it. Or chances are, we've already gone down that rabbit hole. Between all three of us, it's like, wow, every day if something comes up, it's like, that's exactly what we do is we go down the rabbit hole. So in conclusions, my LDL is high, so I'm at risk. Yeah, you can't take the LDL alone and say, oh, this is my problem. This is how I'm healthy or I'm not healthy. And your total cholesterol went down, so I'm healthier. That's not necessarily true either. And as we're talking to you, and same thing with my triglycerides are normal. Well, that's great, but that's only one part of your panel that you need to take into consideration. You need to take it all into consideration, and that's exactly what this PDF that you're welcome to download for free will break all that down, and it'll help you be able to put those numbers together to understand them, and then you get the whole picture, and then you can move forward from there. And you can figure out, okay, so what is my next step? How do I change these? And when you go see your doctor, now you can have a very intelligent conversation with your doctor, because you know what LDL is, you know what HDL is, you know what triglycerides are. And when they're talking to you and they're only bringing up one part of it, well, now you can say, well, what about the rest? Does that not matter? And if it doesn't matter, then why did we do blood work on it? Why did we not just do blood work on LDL? Why did we not just check my triglycerides? Because it all matters. Is there anything before we start bringing this close that you guys want to add?
I mean, about the LDL, there's a test called the particle count, and that's a much more useful test if you're really concerned about those numbers. Because the small dense LDL, those are different from the large buoyant ones, and it's if you're told that your LDL is high, you can have that particle count test, and your doctor probably might not even know about it. So, but if you ask for it, you might actually get it, and that's gonna be much more informative about your metabolic health. And it's a lot of things can affect the particle count there. I think that's probably like one of the top tests in the lipid panel space anyway, because even just getting environmental toxin exposure, or it could be from the diet too. Like those are all gonna affect that results. So it is a useful test. It's expensive, but it might be worth getting if you're interested in that.
Yeah, good point. Very good point. And also, like, just like Hugo just brought up, like you've got the ApoB, which is all part, like this is all the LDL and stuff like that. And again, on the company PDF, please, go get your free copy, and it's all broken down here as well. And it helps you understand what's happening in your body. And also when you go to your doctor, you can have a well-informed conversation with your doctor now, because now you are aware of what these numbers are and what these terminologies mean. And, some questions that you can bring up at your next appointment is like, are any of these numbers in range that need follow-up testing? You could just, everything we just talked to you about is you can talk to your doctor now about. And I'll tell you, we come from a community, or a couple of communities actually, where one of the biggest things that we notice, or I'm going to speak for myself, I notice, is when people aren't informed and they're aware of their blood panel, their lipid panels and stuff like that, when they go back and they talk to their doctor, sometimes they have their doctor thinking and saying, And we've had many, many cases where people come back and say, you know what, my doctor is now looking into this, or my doctor didn't necessarily know that. And I'll tell you, the stories are thousands and thousands. If you want to be healthy, you need to take your health back into your own hands. And that's what we're all talking about. That's what we're encouraging everybody to do. And we're bringing as much information to you as you can that helped us three change our health, which was huge. So on that, before we close it out, and our next episode, just wait for it, it's going to get better and better and better and deeper and deeper and deeper. Is there anything else you guys want to add? Ash, anything you want to add?
I was going to say, I don't think cholesterol is something we need to fear. I think go and look at it from a neutral point of view. Before you decide to look at all the different drugs because your doctors put the fear of God in you, look at all the side effects. Do some research into some of the studies of those side effects. How much longer you're going to live for, all those sort of things. Because I think it's a very important one to look at, because it's one that we have been made to really fear. And when you start going down the rabbit hole, if you want to call it, as Kim called it, but when you actually start doing that research and getting that knowledge, you realize it isn't one. And you realize how important it actually is in your body.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Yeah, and I want to put this out there too, I have the utmost respect for all doctors, whether you're a veterinarian or holistic or whatever you are, because, if they've done the education, they're the ones that deal with people every day. And, just to put in there, they don't always have the best information at their fingertips either. And things are evolving all the time. Things are changing all the time. And as you can see, just the food pyramid that we are seeing being changed now in the U.S., it's getting better and better and better. And what's helping that too is us coming to the table of what we learned and saying, I don't know if that's true anymore, and we're forcing it. And we can be, it's called the grassroots, from the bottom up. And that's what we're doing, and we just want you to be healthy. And the best way to be healthy is knowledge.
Yeah, I resonate with all of that.
Yep, exactly, right? We've all been sick, man. We've all been there. We've all
Yeah.
been there.
But there's
Yeah.
nothing to there's really nothing to be worried about with the lipid panels anyway. Like that's, I mean, it's not gonna, you're not gonna die of a heart attack anyway if you're gonna, if you have
Right.
some high levels, right? So it's worth taking it like a more careful approach. It's probably made worse than it actually is.
And you can change that. And people don't realize that is you can change those numbers. That's what we're bringing to you. Can make that difference. You don't have to be a slave to different medication that you're be giving and stuff like that. You can take that control back, 100%.
Definitely.
And with that said, is you don't need to fix this today. You just need to know you're not alone. My friends, thank you. It was awesome. Until our next recording in next Saturday, take care.
Right.
Bye.
All right. See you.